Welcome to ABC24 This Week. I'm Richard Ransom. After a 2-week hiatus, we're back to bringing you the real story behind the big stories every Sunday at 9 a.m. and again at 11 p.m. here on ABC24. I'm not sure my boss is going to let me have any more PTO after what happened the past 2 weeks, but it gives me and my panel a lot to talk about today. Tennessee in the national spotlight over and over again, and for all the wrong reasons, due to its response to that horrific school shooting in Nashville that killed 6 people. State lawmakers expelling 2 of their own for protesting in favor of gun safety laws on the House floor, and it backfired big time. The shooting put Governor Bill Lee in a spot. His party is beholden to the gun lobby, but his kids attended Covenant School where the shooting occurred, and his wife's dear friend was one of those killed in the shooting. We'll talk about his reaction to his announcement for gun restrictions. And in the Memphis mayor's race this week, new financial disclosure numbers show who's raised the most and least, with the October election now less than 6 months away. A lot to get to, and we will, but first let me introduce my panel. ABC24 political analyst Otis Sanford is on my far right. Political consultant Susan Adler-Thorpe with Thorpe Communications is to my semi-right. And then my immediate right is Brad Broders, ABC24 Content manager. Got it, okay. I didn't know where to start this, to be honest with you, so I'm gonna let Dan Conaway with the Daily Memphian do it for me. And this is an excerpt from a column that he had on Friday. He said that it's surreal. I'm watching my state slip into another world, certainly not this one. The state of Tennessee has become something Lewis Carroll would have trouble getting a grip on. Up on a limb is the fat Cheshire cat. Our Republican Lieutenant Governor Randy McNally grinning at the proceedings below, leading his party's cruel and targeted legislation against the LGBTQ community while engaging in a flirtatious back and forth on Instagram with a 20-year-old man wearing a dinner napkin. Meanwhile, below, the Mad Hatter, or perhaps the Red Queen, Republican Speaker Cameron Sexton, is running around the House floor screaming, "Off with their heads!" He politically decapitated 2 elected representatives and almost a third. The horrid crime committed by the 3 representatives, their unforgivable transgression, their attack on all we hold dear, worse, said Sexton, than the insurrection and attack on our Capitol was to protest gun violence from the House floor without permission. I think that just nails it, Otis. You know, there are moments in time that just kind of crystallize things, and that's what seems to me has happened here with the Tennessee legislature, which we have for years wondered how does this finally surpass what's happened the previous time, and now look at what happened these last 2 weeks.
There's no question about it, Richard. I mean, this story just sort of galvanized the whole country around unfairness, racism, tone deafness. I mean, everything that you can think of is in this story. Everything bad is in this story. And the Republican supermajority in the House totally miscalculated the response from this. They thought that they had a united front going into expelling these. They had planned it the weekend before, and it fell apart on them, and they look like idiots. And I think Dan Conaway nailed that.
So we're talking about the Tennessee 3, of course, the 3 Democrats in the state legislature who took to the will of the House floor for about 20 to 25 seconds. It was part of a longer protest, but they themselves were caught on video by a Republican lawmaker, which is also against House rules, but that's another topic altogether. And they violated decorum, and they admit they violated decorum. And as a result, there was that vote taken that Otis alluded to. Gloria Johnson escaped being ousted and expelled from the House by 1 vote, yet Justin Jones from Nashville and Justin Pearson from here in Memphis were expelled and shortly reinstated. And, this was actually when he was renominated or reappointed, I should say, by the Shelby County Commission. And what was interesting that day is who showed up and who didn't. Susan, there are 13 county commissioners. 2 are Democrats who were out of country, 4 Republicans, and 7 Democrats showed, but the 4 Republicans did not. Their chairs were empty, so they barely had the votes they needed to reinstate Justin Pearson. What do you think about the 4 Republicans who were no-shows?
Well, full disclosure, I spoke with one of them, Brandon Morrison, the day before, and she told me that she was not going to be there, that she had a long-standing commitment in Oxford, Mississippi, one that she could not cancel. The question is, would she have shown or not? I don't know, but she was legitimately like the 2 Democrats out of town. And as for the other Republicans, the 3 that didn't show, I really don't respect that. I really think that if you're an elected official, then you should have the courage of your own convictions. And if you, by not going, says we're not going to vote on it, why don't you go to your seat and abstain? But don't hide behind not being there. I thought that that was cowardly, and I thought it was wrong. And if you don't have courage as a leader, then step aside. But I think they all knew ahead of time that the 7 Democrats were going to be there. They were the majority. It was going to go through. The question is, if one of them wasn't there, would they have tabled the vote for another time, or would they have let it go down in defeat? We don't know.
Show their pictures. Commissioners Amber Mills, David Bradford, Mick Wright, and Brennan Morrison all were no-shows for that vote. Granted, no profiles of courage here, but would you not say that maybe they did the next best thing because they know that their party's beholden to the gun lobby? There's really no benefit by them showing up, and by not being there voting against it, granted they were there to vote for Justin Pearson, by not voting against it, they're saying maybe implicitly by their absence.
I think that's fair. This whole issue it included all the problems that, negative problems that Otis mentioned, but it also was fraught with politics. And it would be very difficult for some of those Republicans to vote vote in favor of Pearson, but it would send a message to many of the Republicans in the state legislature that helped them with their campaigns that we're voting against you and making you look even worse. So they knew that the votes were there to reinstate him. They stayed away. I still think they should have shown up.
So let's talk about Representative John Gillespie, State Rep John Gillespie, the lone Republican who voted against expelling Justin Pearson. The other Republican, white representatives voted to have him expelled. Does he get A+ for at least not voting to, I don't know if it's a generational thing or maybe it's politics, because Otis, as you were saying, his district is maybe more mixed than most, not as gerrymandered as others. What are your thoughts?
Well, perhaps he saw the writing on the wall of what kind of backlash this was going to ensue. I mean, maybe he believed in it personally, but also believed in going against the backlash that the state had. And to Otis and Susan's point, I mean, I don't understand what was their long game here? Because if you expel them, they're in from Memphis and Nashville, very blue cities with blue councils or commissions.
From D.C. to Los Angeles, they were upset about this.
Right. So all the House Republicans received was just a week of nonstop national attention. I mean, it was on the top of every hour. They were showing live footage. They were showing live footage when Representative Jones was re-sworn in, as well as yesterday or Thursday with Mr. Pearson. Mm-hmm. What was the long game? All of that backlash, all of that ugliness from the national level for what, 6 days of an expulsion? They're right back in the House. They get to walk in triumphantly. Mr. Jones and Representative Johnson came in the other day. They're clapping. You can visibly see some members scowling. What was the point of all of this? Was it worth it?
Well, I just want to make a point. They expelled those 2 gentlemen because they said they violated decorum or they violated the rules. What about the representative who took the video of Pearson and Jones and Johnson protesting? That violates the rule too, to take any kind of video. We don't even know who it is.
And we don't know who that is.
Here, Smart Money says that it's a Republican.
We know it.
Oh, we know it's a Republican. I have no doubt about it.
You don't know.
Oh, I bet it is.
You don't know.
To Brad's point, talking about Gillespie, if he's had some forethought to see what was down the road, he was the only one who did. I believe that there is a political motive behind what he did. As I mentioned to you, Richard, he won the last election by about 2,800 votes out of about 24,000 cast. So it was fairly close, closer than any other incumbent Republican that was on the ballot. And so while he voted to expel Justin Jones, he did not vote to expel Pearson because he figured it was going to come back on him. That district is closer in terms of Democrat, Republican than any other district. Certainly Mark White's and Kevin Vaughn's and certainly Tom Leatherwood's.
Yeah.
And then we had the leaked audio, which, I love these moments too.
I love it.
It was a Republican caucus meeting. They didn't know it was being recorded, and it got leaked by the Tennessee Holler, where you had one representative saying that the party is at war for the Republic was one phrase that was used. You got to do what's right, even if you think it's wrong, which was an interesting comment made by another state lawmaker. And another saying, I've been called a racist and misogynist more times in the past 3 days than I have in my entire life. Okay.
I love it. I love it. You got to do
That's
what's
true.
right, even if you think it's wrong. It goes back to courage of your convictions. That is just, it's Tennessee state legislature looked like a bunch of fools to the rest of the nation.
They really
just
did.
a bunch of fools, and we all should be embarrassed. And you know what's going to be interesting? How they handle it here on out, with Mr. Pearson and Mr. Jones and Ms. Johnson back on the floor. And they are emboldened, and they have public opinion behind them. I think the State House is going to have to tread very carefully with them.
And to the point about that leaked video, which obviously was leaked by a Republican, they were the only ones in the room, that shows you the dysfunction of the Republican caucus, for one thing. But Richard, I've lived almost 70 years. And in all of my 70 years, anytime a racist gets mad for being called a racist, that person is a racist. So I heard the entire tape myself. It was a poster for dysfunction, for anger, for backstabbing, because they figured if everybody hung together and expelled all three, it would be less of a problem than expelling 2 African Americans and letting the white woman stay.
And they were right.
And they were right.
And Sexton violated one of the basic tenets of politics, that you never call for the vote unless you know where your votes are.
Yeah.
Well,
And
that's
he
right.
didn't know where all his votes were.
Well, one of them, they say double-crossed them.
Well, that's...
We're talking about House Speaker Cameron Sexton, who basically gets the crown for screwing this all up. And there, of course, have been investigations since. They're questioning whether he's paid his property taxes, questioning about his residency ever since. I think his political future is going to be interesting to follow as well, because I think there's a lot of questions about that.
Yeah, and to Otis and Susan's point, I mean, not only was this bad enough, just the national negative attention, throw in the element of race, it made it even worse. I mean, it was bad. It would have been bad enough if all 3 of them had been expelled. But then you have Gloria Johnson out in the hallway. They're like, do you think it was because of a racial thing? And she's, well, I'm the only white woman, or something to that extent. So I'm sort of paraphrasing
It's because
here.
of the color of my skin.
Right, the color of my skin. So, it's just like that was just adding insult to injury with already.
Yeah. Then he
Cameron
likened it to
Sexton-
the insurrection. I thought that was just unbelievable when he said it was worse than the insurrection, actually.
Well, and so did Mark White.
Yeah.
Cameron Sexton did have designs of running for governor, probably still has, in 2026. This did immeasurable damage to that, because I don't see how he recovers from this and has any shred of credibility, not just among diehard Democrats, but independents and even some moderate Republicans in this state. He did immeasurable damage to his political future.
But talking about the long game, what's the long game for Democrats in Tennessee? Can they use this as a moment to chip away some of the seats to make the supermajority not a supermajority? That's the question.
Maybe in, 50 years?
Yeah, right.
But
I won't be around.
You look at the maps,
Well,
and
wait a minute.
it's still a pretty...
I think Brad makes a really good point. I think once again we've seen young people mobilize and say, listen to us. It's our world soon. And they went to the streets in Nashville and they changed the trajectory of what was happening.
Right.
We now have Governor Lee proposing a red flag law. Whoever would have thought he would have done that?
Yeah, and we're going to talk about that in the next segment. I'm way over time in this segment, but has anyone, I don't think we've talked enough about the irony here that you had 2 African Americans in their 20s standing up and protesting after a school shooting at an exclusive white school. I checked on the website. It's $17,000 a year to go to the Covenant School. Predominantly white school. They were the ones who were expelled from the legislature.
Hugging parents. You see them hugging parents.
Mr. Jones and Mr. Pearson have, I'm certain, have long political careers ahead of them.
Not to mention, these young men grew up, when Columbine happened, they probably were 5, 6 years old. Their whole lives, they know nothing but school shootings. It's
And
more
having to deal with
personal
it.
to them. They have a personal lived experience that many of the older Republicans don't.
Emergency drills and the whole lot. All right, we are way over time. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we are going to talk about that gun legislation that Governor Lee is proposing right after this.